Good morning, church. So if we were to look back at the last several years since the pandemic, I know that we would all agree that many things have changed in the way that we live, right? And one thing that has undeniably changed is the way that we interact. In particular, during this time, we've seen the exponential growth of video communications, right? So for sure, at first, it might have felt a little restrictive when just about everything was forced to move online. But it did open many of us to new horizons and opportunities of communication, right? And we got used to this new normal of online connection. And for people like me who are technologically challenged, we've even gotten pretty good at it, right? We now know how to start a Zoom call and how to make sure we're unmuted before we start speaking, right? So through things like Zoom and FaceTime and Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, all that stuff, we learned this new way of contact that could reach far and wide. And yet, as much as these unique years afforded us new ways and new heights of communicating, we still know at the core of our being that real in-person contact is irreplaceable. Right? We all remember those examples of virtual get-togethers, right? Where you tried to make the best out of the situation, but it just wasn't the same. Right? So a few of my personal examples. My big birthday bash for my 29th birthday. Right? I had some great friends who helped me celebrate. They dropped off some Filipino food at my house, and they rushed home to hop online to get the wild party started. Right? I mean, we did the best that we can, but at the end of the day, it was still a pretty underwhelming birthday. Right? Or my Christmas family gathering of 2020. We're all looking at each other on a screen. Again, did the best that we can, but in all honesty, it was a kind of a lame Christmas. Or even Easter vigil of that pandemic year. We couldn't even celebrate here in the church, and it was just the weirdest thing having to experience everything watching it on a TV. Right? Even for my brother priests. And if you're looking at that wondering, where is Father Simon? Well, while we were all busy being holy, Father Simon was busy taking the picture, right? Somebody had to do it. But without that real in-person contact, things just weren't the same, right? No video alternative, no matter how great the video or the sound or the production, can replace real contact with real people. And why is that? Because we're made as physical beings. With physical senses, and that's how we fully experience the world. Right? And we know intuitively that there is powerful communication and expression in physical contact. So some simple examples, right? A high five or a fist bump, right? That uniquely communicates affirmation and camaraderie between persons. Or a handshake, right, uniquely communicates trust and respect and peace between persons. Or an embrace uniquely communicates comfort and consolation and support between persons. Right? No emojis can replace this kind of physical contact. Right? A virtual hug just isn't the same. Because there's something good and uniquely powerful about real person-to-person contact. And we see this so clearly in our gospel today. So, very simple story. We hear of this man who is deaf and partially mute. And he's brought to Jesus, and Jesus completely heals him. Right? Completely heals him. He's able to hear and speak perfectly after his encounter with Jesus. And what's so interesting is how Jesus chooses to heal this man. Right? So, let's be clear. Jesus, because he's fully God, could have healed this man with a single word. Boom, he would have been healed. He could have healed this man with a single look or even a single thought, and boom, he would be healed on the spot. He could have healed this man from far away if Jesus was in a completely different town or place, and still the man would be healed. Jesus could have done that, but he doesn't. He doesn't. Jesus chooses to heal this man in a very specific way. He heals him by real physical contact with him. Now, this is the best photo that I can find But the gospel actually says this, that Jesus puts his fingers into the man's ears, and Jesus touches the man's tongue. Now let's be honest. Jesus, my bro, that is weird. Right? That is weird. And I was trying to picture it in my head and just curious how Jesus did it, right? Like, did he put, two fingers in the ears like this? Or did he have one finger in the ear and one on the tongue like this? Or did he put his finger in the ear and then use the same finger on the tongue, which would have been kind of gross and unhygienic, right? We don't know. We don't know. We're spared the details, and maybe that's for the better. But it is through this very unique physical contact that the power of Jesus flows from him into this man to heal him completely. And this isn't the only time that something like this happens. In other times in the Gospels, we see Jesus chooses to heal through direct and personal contact, through some contact with the senses of the person that's in front of him. So we see that the power flows from Jesus when he touches the person, when he breathes on the person, when he speaks and his voice enters the ears of the person. There's even one instance where he spits on the person's eyes to heal his blindness. I mean, talk about something you would never do, right? Especially in the pandemic. But healing comes and power flows through this physical contact with Jesus, this real person-to-person contact with him. And in this particular case, in today's gospel, the man's deafness and muteness, his ears and his tongue, are healed by Jesus' direct touch. Now, what if I were to tell you that this exact same contact with Jesus happens every single time that you walk through those doors, that you sit in these pews, and you participate in this liturgy? See, the Catechism of the Catholic Church tells us that there are 4 ways that Jesus is truly present in the Mass. First, he's present in the priest, and he's present in the assembly of believers. And by the way, both of these ways involve people that we can see, that we can have personal contact with. Right? And that's why watching Mass online during the pandemic, it just wasn't the same as being physically present here at Mass. Right? It was better than nothing, but it wasn't a replacement for the real presence of Jesus. Now the Catechism goes on to say, you might not be able to see it on the screen, that Jesus is also present in the Word of God. And of course, Jesus is also present in the Eucharist. And so, if these are the ways that Jesus is truly present to us in the Mass, then these last 2 ways are exactly the same as what we hear in the Gospel today. That when we hear and listen to the Word of God being proclaimed to us, it is Jesus touching our ears with his very presence. And when we receive and consume the Eucharist, it is Jesus touching our tongues with his very presence. And so at every single Mass, each one of us is this deaf and mute man in the gospel, coming into real contact with Jesus. And if we come into contact with Jesus in the exact same way as the man in the gospel did, then we too are meant to experience the exact same power as the man in the gospel did. Right? It's the same Jesus. It's the same physical contact, the same desire to heal and work, the same power flowing from Jesus into us, provided that we come with an expectant faith. See, the gospel tells us that there was a crowd of people that brought this man to Jesus, and they begged him to heal this man. Right? They had an expectant and desperate faith in Jesus' power. And the man himself, he wanted it too. How do we know that? Well, I don't know about you, but if somebody tried to put his finger in my ear, right, to try to give me a wet willy, my instinctive response would be to duck my head and to slap the hand out of the way, right? And this man probably would have done the same thing, unless he wanted Jesus to touch him. And he lets Jesus do it. As weird as this gesture is, because he wanted and expected Jesus' power. And it was through this expectation that something would come out of this contact with Jesus that this man is then fully healed of the things that are holding him back from a full life. And then he's able to go out and tell everyone about it. And so expectation is key. Expectation is key. What is your expectation? If this is really Jesus who touches us, and it is, are you expecting his power to move in you in some way? It's the same power. It's the same Jesus. But do you come with the same expectation? Here's a quick thought experiment. I'll get you to close your eyes very briefly. Close your eyes and just think back to a little earlier this morning when you were getting ready for Mass. As you were driving over here in your car, what was on your mind? What was on your heart? Were you coming here with any sense of expectation that something powerful might happen today? When you walked through the doors of the church, when you took your seat in the pew, did you have any sense of expectation that today Jesus' power might do something amazing? That you would walk out of the church at the end of Mass a different person? Okay, you can open your eyes. If your honest answer to any of these questions is that, you know what, I really didn't come with this kind of expectation, that's okay. But now you're aware that every time we are here, we are in fact coming into direct contact with Jesus. Jesus touches our ears by his word, and he touches our tongue by his Eucharist. And if we come with expectation, if we come here personally bringing something to Jesus, we will experience his undeniable power in our lives. And so I ask you, what is your deafness and your muteness that Jesus wants to heal? What is your ailment or obstacle or fear that Jesus wants to remove? What is your need or hunger or lack that Jesus wants to fill? What do you come with to bring into real contact with the power of Jesus? Because he wants to do something powerful in you every single time that you are here. And does this mean that you're going to experience exactly what you're asking for or exactly what you expect? Not necessarily. Right? Jesus knows best what we need, even when we don't. But it does mean that every single time that you come here, every single time that we come here, we're meant to walk out of here different in some real way. Because with expectant hearts, we have come into real, direct contact with the power of Jesus. Now, in the last number of weeks, we've already been talking about experiencing the power of Jesus in the Eucharist. But today I want to share with you very briefly a personal story of when I experienced the power of Jesus in the Word, in hearing the Scriptures proclaimed at Mass. So I was 21 years old at the time, and I was in this place of really struggling for direction in my life. In particular, I was struggling with getting clarity about my vocation, about God's calling for me. So at the time, I was in a fairly serious dating relationship. I was dating this lovely girl for several years. But also, in the 6 months leading up to that moment, I had been feeling this increasing tug and curiosity about the priesthood. And I felt like I was in this growing dilemma, like I was at a crossroads and I didn't know which way to go. Now, this one particular Sunday where I was especially feeling just lost and confused about it all, I went to Mass with this real desperate desire for God to show me the way, for God to just show me what to do. And I didn't know how he was going to show me, but I went to Mass just asking that I might get some clarity, even if it was just a little bit. And my profound experience came during the proclamation of the gospel, when the priest read the gospel and then broke it open in his homily. And that day, it was a gospel passage that I'd heard so many times before. But on this particular day, it was like in it, Jesus was speaking directly with his voice straight into my heart and telling me exactly what to do. It was like all of a sudden there was nobody else in the church but me. And Jesus was holding this giant billboard saying, Dan, here is your next step. It was that level of clarity and certainty. And in that moment, during the liturgy of the word, I knew exactly what I was supposed to do. It's like something was unblocked within me in the hearing of the word of God. It's like I had a deafness that Jesus healed when I came into direct contact with him in his word. And so I left Mass that day a different person. I had a new clarity and I had a new ability to respond to his calling. And so later that evening, I made the decision to end the relationship that I was in order to discern the priesthood. And obviously that's a decision that has changed the entire trajectory of my life. And because of that contact with Jesus in his word, here I am as a priest, right? Loving life, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But friends, this is the power of Jesus that we come into contact with at every single Mass, in his word and in his Eucharist. He's wanting to fill us. He's wanting to heal us. He's wanting to free us and direct us. And if we walk into here every single time with expectant hearts, we will always walk out changed and different in some real way. Because just like that healed man in the gospel, we are changed by the same Jesus, with the same desire to heal and work, the same power flowing from Jesus into us. And we go forth from here changed, ready to tell the world that Jesus is real and that he is alive.